Of course, the phone is going to ring while I'm trying to do this. Anyway, I will splice everything together, and it might not be the best looking thing, but it will work. Yeah, she seems confident in how to do a pin stitch, and she has used an away waist knot, which Pam Reed did an excellent video on using that, and if you're not familiar with that, that would be a good one to look at. But Avis is really interested in keeping the backs of her work neater, and I know that the back of your work can be a hot topic sometimes, and I'm just going to tell you what my opinion is, and everybody's got an opinion. I was always taught to keep the back neat, but I don't let it drive me crazy trying to stand on my head to keep the back neat, because sometimes you just can't. If you do heaven and earth designs and it has all that confetti in it, or you're doing another pattern that has full coverage and a lot of color changes, you have to decide, am I going to pause every little bit and do like a pin stitch to end it, or what is going to be acceptable to me to carry a thread over, and how important is that back going to be to me? I guess the only rules that stick in my mind that are rules for myself are that I like to keep it neat for a few reasons. One, if it's lumpy and bumpy on the back, it can distort how the front looks. And if you're going to put all that time and effort into it, you want it to look nice on the front. Sometimes your back can be just a horrible tangled mess, but the front looks fine. Who's going to know that it's back there unless, you know, your great-grandchildren decide to reframe great-grandma's work or great-grandpa's work, and they open up the back of it to reframe it, and here's my thinking on it. On my pieces, they might go, wow, look how neat. Or they might go, oh my gosh, look what a mess. Does it matter? No. You do need to be careful, and especially like in something like what I'm working on here. You need to be careful that you're not carrying stuff over, that the back is not really that uncontrolled, but you get that shadow. You're seeing it on the front. Like I said, you want the front to look nice. Now, there are a few things you can do to keep it looking nice. Now this one, and I'll show the back in a second, is pretty easy because, you know, you're just following along, and you can just keep, you know, your threads running along the back. So when I'm stitching, I'm thinking about where that thread is laying on the back of the work. This was originally charted to use variegated threads, and I'm not doing that. I'm using DMC conversion, where I am blending some threads. But when it's a variegated work and you want the variegation to show correctly, then, you know, you're doing each individual cross to keep it looking nice as it goes around. So this pattern is really set up to do that, to do a full cross all the way around. I don't always do that when it's something like this, especially if I'm converting and I don't have a variegation. I will do a half of the cross and work my way around, then come back and finish the cross to keep it neater. And let me show you what I'm talking about here. Now, the back is not too bad on this one. I'm not too concerned with it, but you can see here where I've either ended or started a thread, and I've run it back behind the stitches. And these stitches here, I'm actually making a full cross as I go. And you can see I'm getting a little look of a V going along behind here. But everything's lining up, so it's not showing through on the front. Here, you can see that this one's kind of out by itself, so I did half the cross all the way down, half the cross back up, and this little bit of a thicker area is where I have woven the ends in or out, in and out, to stop, because I started that with a loop start. Up here, and let me get it close. Bear with. I think I've got it figured out. You know, I just discovered this thing as a pause button. Alright, now, see, this is one color, and it just does this little zigzag along the bottom. And here is how I'm keeping those stitches, keeping in mind that I don't want any shadow. So if I'm carrying a thread from the top leg to the bottom, I want to have it kind of running behind it instead of coming across. And this is a really good one because you've got these angles. Now, I'm right-handed. I stitch two-handed when it's on my frame, most of the time. And I stitch from bottom left to top right is how I lay down my first leg. And then if I'm just stitching across and I'm not having to worry about where the thread is, then I complete my stitch from bottom right to top left. This I have to do a little bit different. Now, it has where we're going to go up. Let's see, we've got starting on the third leg here, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have to go up 7. So here's number 3, and I'm trying to stitch looking through the camera, so this is a little awkward. So I'll go back down, and I've got 3 stitches. Now the fourth one, and they all set one over, one over, one over. Now the fourth one, I ended right there, so if I come over, and remember I'm doing 2 over 2, if I come over on the back, that thread is carrying along in that line, which is perfect. It will keep it from showing up. Or I can do it this way and come up in at the top, and instead of going bottom left to top right, I'm going top right to bottom left. And then my next one, since I'm moving up the piece, I want my thread to be going up the piece. So I come up and go down, and I stitch much faster than this, but like I said, I'm looking through a camera and a magnifying glass, so this is a little different. Okay, so I've gone up 4, and I had to go up 7. So I'm doing the same thing because I want that back thread to be hidden, and I want it not to show through on the front. And by doing it this way, I'm less likely for it to show. And I'm just stitching one-handed right now because this is so odd to me, and I want you to be able to see it. And I'll show you when I get up here and I start down the other side, I'll do it just a little differently to make sure that thread goes the right way. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, got to do one more. I generally don't railroad my stitches because I hold a fairly decent amount of tension, and it has just become habit to me, and I didn't really realize I did it until we were talking about railroading stitches and how to keep them straight. And I do give my needle a little bit of a twist while I'm working, and it's just something that I've built a habit up. I have learned that keeps things laying a little flatter, and I do not obsess over it. Okay, so now I've done 7 up, and I'm up at the top, and now I need to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches. Now, thread ended up here. Next stitch is going to be from here to there, there to there, and going down. If I start down here where I normally do, then that back thread is carrying along on the outside edge, and I'm trying to keep the shadowing down, and I'm trying to keep it neat, so I will not start that way. I will go straight down. So now on the back, that thread is laying right there, and you can see it a little on the front, but when this is framed, or I'm going to turn it into a pillow, you will not have a shadow. So let me go down here. Notice that excuse me, notice that the legs are all going the same way. Now I know that the next one is going to be down here, so I will start the last leg down here, because if I start up here and go here, then, you know, I'm crossing over and it's hard to think, now which way do I need to go? My whole object here is to keep it neat. So I'll do it again, down like that, and I'm working this as if I was working a variegated thread. I could do like a running stitch and go down and then come back up and get them, and that would make it even a little bit neater on the back, but in this particular pattern it's easier for me to keep up with the oh goodness, look at that, I'm so silly. Okay, I've done this. So here's what I do. When I've done this, I will hold the thread a little tighter at the back, put my needle back up through there, that way I'm not splitting the thread or pulling a knot, and see it pop right out. See, I was running my mouth, I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. Now this is a linen, and here is a really good place to see why some people hate linen, or just they find it hard to work on. I've worked on it for so many years that this doesn't faze me. My brain just thinks ahead. Yeah, that's a thicker one. Look where the other little hole is, and it's not going to throw me too bad. But can you see here this thicker slub? And that's something that you get with linen because it's a natural product. And you just continue counting like you would normally, even though you've got that little thicker area. See, I'm going down to, I know that one's a little thinner and the other's a little thicker, but I really do not see a huge distortion in my stitches when I work on linen, and it does not bother me at all. I have to move you guys just a tiny bit so I can see just a tiny bit better. Let's see if I can't move you all just a little bit. It's going to be a little motion sick because you're going to be looking through a magnifier and not and R and ugh. Yeah, there you can see, and I can see. Okay, and I'm doing 9 down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I was just sitting and stitching, I would be marking this off on my Kindle or on this when I'm actually working off of paper. I'll just be marking it off on the paper. But this is super easy stitch. It's nothing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm talking and completely losing my place. Uh-oh. Now I've got a finger back there, and normally when I'm doing two-handed stitching, the other hand's back there, and I can feel I pulled a little bit of a knot. So I can either try and pull it out with my fingernails, which it fell out from the back, which I usually try that first, or I can actually pull the knot to the front, then take my needle and kind of fix the hole where I've made a little bit bigger, and then work the knot out. But when I stitch two-handed, that hand on the back really can save you a lot. And I find that I catch myself taking my hand, and on the back I'm kind of rubbing a finger along because you can feel the knots. Saves you a lot of woe in picking out if you can catch it before you flip it over to thread something back through. That's 7. Eight. 9. Now we're going back up again, and it goes up 8. And I'm going to do the same thing. I want that thread to be laying here instead of here. Personal taste. It's just how I started it out, and it works for me. There's 1. I bet you I have to move you all again. I bet you won't be able to see to the end. But this is such an easy stitch. But it does have a lot of opportunities to show starting with 2 threads and starting with 2 different threads from 2 different colors, and how to end, because you have a lot of open area and you're stopping and starting quite a bit to keep that uncluttered and looking nice. I had a cousin who was looking at something I was cross-stitching, and she was talking about a friend of hers who, and this is a prime example of why to kind of keep your backs neat. She had done this beautiful work, and it was very, very large, but it was like a Bible verse or something. I don't remember exactly what she said it was. And she had done like a cream fabric and had done like 3371 for the lettering, which is a very almost black thread. She took it to the framers. She paid an enormous amount to have it framed, and it looked horrible. And it wasn't anything that the framers had done. They had done a wonderful job of framing, but when she had done it, She carried threads from word to word, from line to line, and when it was framed, every bit of that carried thread on the back and shadows shone through, which would just be heartbreaking, because you know she spent hours on end doing that, and she was so upset. And I'm sure there are a lot of framers. If I knew why it cut me off, I would surely fix it. But it looks pretty even, so that's good. Okay, give me a minute. I'm going to move things around and I'll start a thread. I'll show you how to start a thread. Okay. Now, this I'm going to do, it's a little heart. And this is using, since I'm converting over to DMC, it's using 2 colors of DMC together, which means that my end, see, I'm using 2 strands, but I cannot do the loop method because it's 2 different individual strands. So I'll show you how I would handle that. I've determined where my stitch is supposed to come up, which in this case it's 5 stitches over, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 stitches, 10 holes. Remember, I'm working 2 over 2. So to make my first leg, I'll just go ahead like normal, make my first leg. Now I have the tail on the back, and I'm either going to try and pause you guys or you're going to flip-flop. We'll see which way works best. So I've got my other hand back behind, and I can feel the length, and I'm leaving me a little bit of a tail. Now when I say a little bit, I can do one of 2 things. I can hold it over and stitch over it, which that usually works great, but occasionally you get something that it adds a little thickness and it doesn't look good. See, now here's the back. And see, there's the tail. I can either take this tail and hold it under the stitches as I'm stitching, crossing this over it like this to secure it. And that may not even be the right place to come up, but I'm just going to show it right quick. Like that to start securing it. Or I can pull this back out. I can leave that tail, and then when I put a few stitches in, come in and just weave it in just like I ended the other one before. I'm going to stitch over it. So I leave myself sufficient tail that I can run it under a few stitches. If I was doing a single long line, it would be real easy. I would just be holding it out straight from it and would be catching it that way. But this is a little hard, so it's a little bit harder to do where you've only got a few stitches to begin with. So I put my hand on the back and I take hold of the tail. Okay, hand on the tail, pull the thread up, excuse me, put my first leg in of my first stitch, and the heart of the top of this one has 2 stitches. So I put my tip of my needle in where I'm going to do the first leg of the next stitch. And since I'm not doing a long line and this is a little funny shaped, I'll flip it over, and I want to show you all too. A lot of this you can do with feel after you've worked it on it a bit. So here's the back. And see, here's the tail. This one here's the tail. You can see where my stitch is getting ready to start forming. See, I'm laying, and like I said, a lot of this would be by feel, but I wanted to go through this step by step. I'm laying my tail out to the side. You'll see my needle is going in below, my thread laying above, and then when I pull through to work the stitch, you see it's caught. Now, over on the other side, I'm going to form the second stitch's first leg there, and see that one I would pull through just like normal. On the back I still have the tail. Now I'm going to want to secure the tail again. So what I'm going to do is go ahead, put my needle in just like I was getting ready to do the second leg on this stitch here. I have the terriblest tickle and nothing to drink. Now, here's the back. And I know this is slow and tedious because I'm having to tighten and untighten. This is not my stand that flips. Okay, see, I still got the tail. And what I'm doing is the same thing I did a minute ago. See how I'm catching that tail? And it's holding it. It's still not secure well, but it's beginning. It's a beginning. Now, the top of this heart only has 2 stitches. So, I've got my one hand back here that is holding the tail. And see, it's pretty secure. I'm not tugging really tight, but it's holding. I make the top leg of that stitch. Get ready to come up and do the second leg of the first one. Let's see, here's what's going on the back. See, here's my tail. It's already secured down. Now I want to make sure that when I make that next bit of the stitch, see the loop? There's really good. See, here's the tail. See how the loop is catching it? So it's holding it very, very well. Flip it over here. I know this is so slow, but I thought I'd brought my other frame in here because it rotates. But I didn't, and it has my save the stitches on it, so that would have been a good one to show it too. Alright, on the front, now I'm finishing the second stitch. Now the next row down on this has 4 stitches. And now here's a really good example. This one comes out 1 stitch. Now see, I could start here and do that, But on the back, I know I've got a thread that's out here in Never Never Land all by itself, so I'm not going to do that. Again, a little out of my normal everyday where I would start it. I do it here, so if that thread's carrying on the back. Finish the first leg. I'm coming up for the first leg of the stitch beside of it. And on the back, now I'll weave down 2 to 3 rows depending on how many stitches. This second row will probably hold it no problem. Okay, see, here's the tail. Let me open this up so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, see, here's the tail. We're down on the second row. You've got the tail. It's in the loop. You all can't see that a bit. Okay. Alright. It was just me fiddling anyway. Okay, see, here's the tail. Here's the loop that is forming where I'm making the next leg on the stitch. You see, when I pull, it catches it. And then what I'm going to be doing is I will hold it out like this, continue making the other stitches, and it's going to continue to get caught up in that loop. Now, I am not going to mess with that anymore. I'm going to leave the tail and do a couple of stitches here, and then I'll show you how, if I had left the tail free, I would weave it back in. So, this has 4 stitches, like I said. So if I was just going to weave the tail, and not worry about catching it, and I'm sure I'm catching it partially back there now, I'm going to go ahead, do my 4 stitches. And this, if I was using a variegated thread, I would be having to use, like I said, I'd have to make each individual stitch. Whereas where I'm just blending, I'm just doing a little row of stitches, one leg over, and then come back and do the second leg. Now, the next row, same thing, it goes over one. And let's see, it has 5 stitches in it. So let me do this really quick, and then I'll show you what I was talking about as far as weaving it back in. And this is, like I said, I'm going pretty slow because this is so awkward. I'm looking around the camera and through the magnifying glass and kind of hunched over, one-handed instead of 2. Okay, that should give me enough that I can weave that back in. Let me get this off. Let me pause you for a second if possible. Okay, so I took those few stitches out so I could show you weaving the tail in. So, here's the back. And this is the thread that I'm using to make the stitches. and here is the tail. See, stitching just looks like your normal, average, everyday stitching. And what in the world did I do with my needle thread? There it is. Okay, now to weave the tail in, and this you would use like where I'm blending two threads, or if you had an odd number of threads, like say you were working a pattern that said to use 3 strands, this would be what you were doing, because you can only do the loop start with an even number of strands, like you can do if you're doing 2 strands and it's the same color, or if you're doing 4 strands and maybe you're doing 2 different colors, you can still do the loop start with that. Okay, so here's the tail, there's the stitching, same thing. See, I just run it under, and can you see that? I came down to the next one below, and I'm running it back the same way. I'm being really careful here not to make this too tight so I don't distort the stitches, and that right there should hold through whatever I put it through. Then I will just go in here, clip the tail off, and I'm off to the races. Stitch as normal. Just rethread with my thread that I was making the stitches out of. Okay, now let me pause you for a minute, and I'm going to move to a different section and show a loop start. Okay, loop start. I have 1 strand of floss, and I've cut it to a comfortable length for me. I have brought the 2 cut edges together down the end of this. See, the 2 strands are together. See, you have a loop. So we'll thread the needle up with the end where the 2 cut ends are together. Now I'm going to show this on the front. The process is the same on the back as it is on the front as far as the technical part of it. So I'm starting on the V in this pattern. The top of the V is 3 stitches over from this heart. 1, 2, 3. 3 stitches, 6 holes. Now, I've inserted my needle. I'm going to pull it through, leaving the loop coming up from the back. See, I go from bottom left to top right with my first leg. When you're starting on the front, go through, back up where it's going to end, then take your needle and you're putting it through the loop. Pull till it starts getting down close. Then you take your needle, you put it back in the same hole that you came up with it just a moment ago. Pull it through and pull, and the loop goes to the back. Then you can just kind of center it in the middle back there. You've got it secured. You're ready to go. Now let me show you how you do that on the back. So I didn't pull it very tight so that I could get it out. Again, just thread your needle or the two cut ends or what you're threading through. You've got the loop on the other end. Now, loop start from the back. Just as if you were stitching any other time. The third stitch over. I bring my needle through and put my other hand back behind, because my other hand is catching the tail because I don't want to pull it through. See, there's the loop. And what I do is I usually have a finger in that loop on the back and I pull it. Okay. Loop is on the back, needle on the front. Put your needle back down just like you were forming the first leg of your cross. Now, let me flip it over and show you what's going on in the back. If it was just a normal stitching, I would just feel back there and know to run it through, but I want to show it. The whole point of this. Okay. Now, here's the back. Okay. Now, get it up here where you can see it. There we go. See the loop? And here is the thread that is coming up from the front. You take your needle, feed it through that loop, right like that. Pull the loop down. Doesn't take a whole lot of pressure. You're just holding the same kind of tension you are when you're stitching. You don't want to stretch your holes out. You don't want the first leg to be wonky. So I usually, and if I was stitching, my hand that was on the back would feel this, and I would just kind of put my finger on it and center it. So see, now you've got it looped and started. Loop start works with an even number of threads. See, here, 2 threads. If you had 4, if you had 6, if you had 8, loop start would still work for you. Will not work with odd numbers. Odd numbers, you're going to have to, depending on the project, do a waist knot or a pin stitch or weave it in from the back. One of those to lock it down. Now, let me show you the front. See the leg on the front. Looks just like a normal leg of stitching that you would do anywhere. You just want to keep that tension, because if you pull too hard, then you're going to be pulling open one of the holes a little bit too big. Which, if you do that, just you take your needle. See, this one's a little big. And just do a little wiggle here. Make it look back normal like everything else does. Now, this one, again, if it was worked with variegated, I would do a full cross, go down, do the next 4 across, go down, do the next 4 across, and so on. This is not variegated. It's one color, not necessary. A lot of times what I like to do, and this is something that I'm doing on the Save the Stitches, is I will come down, do just half a leg, the only thing with doing this is tension. Your tension is key. You want it just as even as you can get it. Now you'll notice where these are one below the next, how I am kind of alternating where I am coming up. See, here I come up on the left. On this next one, instead of the left bottom, right top of that stitch. Again, I'm thinking, where is that thread back behind it? And I'm wanting it to carry down to cause as little shadow and be as neat as possible. And see, now that has 5 stitches, and then the next one is off to one side. I come up this way, going to go back down through here, then it has ones that are in a straight line up and down. So I'm alternating. And I'm just going to go down to the end of this and come back up and show you how I come back up. Okay, sorry, I was counting. There's 6. Does knocked you all. I have got to get a better camera so that I can put the little darling back away so I'm not bumping it so much. That's 6 stitches. Now, to go back, and normally I would just continue down and finish up the letter, but because I want to show you this is how I would come back up. We'll just pretend that I've went all the way around, doing the same thing as I did going down. I'm alternating where I'm bringing the needle up, still keeping my legs crossing the same way on the X's. I'm just thinking, where is that thread on the back? See, I went straight up because I want that thread to be running up the back. I don't want it to be out here by itself where it could possibly be a shadow. Okay, so back where we started from. Now, let's flip it over and let's finish this off. This is just not want to be good to me. Okay, now to finish it off, see, I'm just weaving it. And when I have it like this, I like to go back and forth. Trying to keep my fingers out of the way so you can kind of see it. Let's see. That's a little better. Okay. See, I'm going back and forth. I am not putting an enormous amount of pressure on that. I am not pulling it tight. And I would do 3 or 4. Then again, I'll just snip it off. There's no shadow. It's good and secure. The back is not lumpy. And the front, which is what is so important, looks very neat. Tension's even. Simple. That is all I'm going to get do tonight. I'm kind of out of time and I'm tired and it's supper time. I'm going to see how this loads, see what it looks like. It may be trash. I may wind up trashing it and starting over. But I am going to do more that are somewhat similar to this, try to get the setup a little bit better, and show a few more things on something that is not as spread out, where you have more stitches together. I may pull out my Rose of Sharon, because that would be a really good one to see stitches together and stopping and starting. I don't have any projects right now that are going that have 3 threads or 4 threads or anything like that. So I don't have anything I could actually show a piece of work of that on. I could do it on a scrap piece of fabric. The Save the Stitches will be, I will eventually get to the part where you are using only one strand. Starting like that, stopping like that is the same as where I started and stopped with these colors where I'm blending 2 threads together. You simply only have 1 thread instead of 2. Weaving in, stitching over it. You can do a pin stitch to start it. Whatever you want, but something that is this open, you really can't use the away knot or the waist knot. Full coverage, yes, and like I said, Pam Reed did an excellent video on showing how that works. You just simply knot off to the side, leave your tail, so when you get over there to clip it off, you pull that tail up tight, clip it, and that little thing goes boing and goes right back in underneath, and you can't see it. It's great, especially if you're working on a frame like I'm working on tonight, where I cannot flip it over without removing the piece. Any questions, any comments, suggestions things you'd like to see, let me know. Leave a comment. Like I said, this week is exceedingly busy. I've got a set of twins that I'm working on their bedding, and I have another one who has seriously had her delivery date pushed up, so I'm staying pretty busy in the workroom, but I can take a few minutes in the evenings, try and do another little video. I'll show you anything that you all would like to see, anything that will help. I will do, the normal update videos as well. Like I said, I want to try and stick with about one a month for that sort of thing, but I have several projects on the go. I might do one every 2 weeks. I'm not sure. It's going to depend on how the work goes and how my schedule goes. I would like to thank everyone for their warm welcome to Flosstube. Haven't been making videos long. Have been watching Flosstube videos before they were ever Flosstube videos. And it keeps me company. I'll turn it on just to hear certain Flosstubers' voices that, I've watched a lot of their videos, and it's like having someone in here in the workroom sitting and chatting about a subject that I love. What's not like about that? Like I said, any suggestions, comments, anything you'd like to see, let me know. Thanks to all my new subscribers. I used to be subscribed to a huge number of Flosstubers, and so many kind of disappeared, and I was having some issues with the computer, and so I trashed my subscription list and started anew. And I know I don't have as many as I used to, so if you are a Flosstuber and are just starting out, something like that, I'm pretty good about catching the ones that people have been making videos for a while. And who is it that I was just watching today that does a lot of shout outs, and so I find videos through her? It's Molly or Joe. It's one of those, and I cannot get their names with, I know the faces, but I can't get the names with the faces. It's the one who's her ceiling in her kitchen just, it collapsed because it got wet. Anyway, she does a lot of shout outs, and so I watch her videos and I'm like, ooh, a new one I didn't know about. And I search, I look for the tags, type in cross stitch Flosstube and see if anyone new pops up. I'm terrible about commenting, and it's just because I'm usually working when I'm watching or listening, and just do not have the time to comment. I do comment some. I hit the like more than I'm commenting, but really watch and enjoy all the videos. And I'm all for more videos. Jump in. I finally got caught up with all of them. Wonderfully Hopeless, she has an excellent playlist of videos of Flosstubers, and great way to go through and find new people that you haven't seen and see all kinds of different videos. It's all in one place, but my goodness, there's like 3,000 and some videos on there, or 4,000, so it's everything that she could pull. You just stick it in your watch later and catch up on a few. And like I said, I think I didn't get too terribly behind. I got a few months behind, but not too terribly. And I finally am caught up. Yay. How long that'll last, who knows? But I'm going to quit rambling. Like I said, anything you want to see, let me know. I am going to definitely try to improve my video quality. Don't know when that'll be. It's when I have time. When I have time to go out and do something. My husband says I'm a hermit, and it's like, I'm not a hermit, I'm just exceedingly busy. Of course, I do like to stay in, went out the other day, and he said, "And what are you going to do when you get home? Are you going to work?" And I said, "No." He said, "You're going to cross stitch, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes." Don't even know why he bothered to ask. It was the weekend. He knew I was going to be sitting in there going, "Ooh, cross stitch." It is my drug of choice, and it is addictive, but I won't get arrested for it. It could break the bank, but I'm pretty good about just getting for a project I'm working on. But yeah, it may be an addiction, but it won't get you arrested. You're not going to find your picture in the newspaper, and you know, it doesn't have any side effects really, other than to make you happy. So I'll see you all later, and hopefully there'll be more videos to come on a normal schedule, hopefully. Normal schedule. Those two words do not go together in my household at all. I'll talk to you later. Bye.